Hi guys, so back with another uni tips video today. So as I said in my first video, this one's going to be kind of about like moving from halls into a second year house situation, just because this happens very quickly when you actually first go to university, or what I did in my case. So in my situation, we started looking at houses very early because we got told that it can be quite difficult to actually get a second year house or get kind of like the ones you want, ones that are nice, that are in a good location for the university and stuff like that. So we actually decided in October that we were going to live together in the flat that I'd been in for my first year. So there were 6 of us in that flat, and 5 of us decided that we were going to live together in a second year house, and then we could start looking to kind of see what the prices were like, what we were going to get for a 5-bedroom house, what kind of area we wanted to live in, all those kind of things we were able to decide nice and early so we could get a house. So first of all, one thing that I'm going to recommend is you go and look at lots and lots of houses. So we actually felt very under pressure when we were looking, I think, and kind of made the mistake of just going for the first one that we saw. So only 3 of the girls came to see it, and they liked it, and they said, you know, the estate agent was very much saying, this is a very good deal, you know, you won't get something like this anywhere else. But don't let that pressure you into just saying you're gonna have it, because actually I think we potentially could have got somewhere slightly better for our money and somewhere kind of like slightly bigger, because living in a house with 5 people, when quite often like your only living space is like the kitchen area because all the rest of the rooms is bedroom, it is quite a tight squeeze. So I think really looking to see what you can get is important, because you want to get, you're going to be living there for a whole year, you want to get something where you're going to feel comfortable. So when you're viewing, some things that I'd definitely recommend to look for is if you're kind of living with more than 4 or more people, you definitely look for more than 1 bathroom. So in halls I actually had an ensuite, so we knew that going from the transition to having our ensuite for a whole year to having to go to shared bathrooms again would be quite different, but that's one thing that we wanted to make sure, that there was 2 bathrooms in the house because there was 5 of us, so that was really important for us. Also, another thing that we wanted to make sure that we had was decent sized bedrooms, because actually this is a space where you're putting all your stuff. Often you're studying in there, you're sleeping in there, like it's your space, and it's not fair for someone to kind of have one really small room or something like that. So when we were looking, we kind of wanted to all have decent sized rooms, so it was fair for everyone. It's also really important to look for cupboard space. Now, you don't want to be going and living somewhere where there's absolutely no cupboard space at all. So we made sure we had lots of drawers, lots of cupboards, and a nice garden is really important as well, because you actually spend a lot more time out there than you think in the summer. So in halls, we had no garden. We were on the 3rd floor, like it wasn't very nice. So that was something really important for us as well, to have, you know, a garden in a living area, so you can make it your own, and you can have your family round and your friends round, and you know, there's enough space, because having a small and cramped area just isn't very nice to live in. Also, when you're going around looking at houses, if there are the people that currently live in the house there, when you're looking, definitely ask them about things they like about the house, things they don't like about the house, how much they pay for bills, what like Wi-Fi provider they're with, like all kind of stuff like that, because you've got to remember they're living there at the moment, and they're going to be honest with you and tell you what's good and what's bad about the house. So it's definitely worth like just asking them, because they won't mind, like they have gone through the position that you're in of, you know, trying to find a good house and trying to find somewhere where they're going to be comfortable. So it's definitely worth asking them anything you want to know, because a lot of the time, you know, the estate agent hasn't lived in that house, they don't know whether their next door neighbours are really noisy. That might be something that you want to consider, or you know, just like some things, like if someone asked me about where I live now, there would be some things that I would say, oh, watch out for this, this can sometimes happen, or those kind of things. And it is really important to just make sure, because you want to make sure you're living in the right place. You need to be able to study there, you need to be comfortable there, and it's where you're going to be living for a year, so it is really important. So obviously the pressure of moving in somewhere very quickly can be quite high, so you don't really get, it depends how well you formed your friendships. So I formed friendships quite quickly with the girls that I was living with, so we decided that we would be happy to live together again, but when I moved into my third year house, I'm actually not living with these girls anymore. I'm living with some people that I've become better friends with over the time that I've been on my course. So you might end up living with people that you might not want to live with, which is obviously not my case, but don't feel too much pressure. Like, as long as you get something kind of sorted before Christmas of your term, then it's kind of, that will be fine. And for my university, I know they have this thing, so I go to Oxford Brookes, and they have this thing called Brookes Lettings. So they actually own some houses, you know, just in the general Oxford area, and they don't bring those out until February. So there is still a chance, if you haven't got anything, that you can go into houses. And there's also, you know, like shared houses where you can opt to maybe not go with anyone you know, but you're going in a room and then you actually make friends with the people you live with. So for instance, some people have to go into a house when they first come to university in their first year because there's not enough room in halls, or if you came in through clearing, that might be something that happens. But the university can set that up a lot of the time, and one of my friends actually did have to do that, and she ended up getting on with her housemates really well, and actually is still going on to live with a few of them in her third year. So it can work like that. So don't be worried. Like, when you're in a house, you do have a lot more of your own personal space, because it's just a bit more spacious and a bit bigger. So even if you don't get on with the people you live with, it's not the end of the world. Like, you're only going to be living here for a year, and yeah, that year might feel quite long if you don't get on with them, but it does go really quickly. So definitely another thing to make sure you ask when you're looking at houses is what the move-in date is going to be, and you need to make sure you know when your contract ends if you're in halls. So for me, I live 3 hours away from where I go to university. I had quite a lot of furniture. I bought quite a lot of furniture with me, you know, like bedside tables and chests of drawers, and I had that in my halls, and I didn't want to have to take all of that home with me and then have to bring it all back up again. So for me, it was really important that I had crossover dates, so when I could move out of my halls and into my house. So we made sure when we were getting a contract that it was kind of at least like a few days or a week that you'd be able to move in. So even for my third year house, when I was going around, I knew that my contract in the house that I live in at the moment ends in the start of August, so I knew that I needed to get a contract in the house that I'm living in for my third year to be kind of end of July, start of August, just so I had those few days in between to be able to move all my stuff across. So my course actually runs, it doesn't like finish in May, June time like a lot of courses do, so mine runs a lot longer. So it's, I think it's like a 47-week course. So I needed to make sure that was really, really, really important, that I definitely had somewhere to live in Oxford at all times, because I didn't want to be with nowhere to live and not be able to go and do my course and have to go home. Whereas like some people, it won't be as important, because I know a lot of people, especially just after their first year when they are in halls, they move out quite early in June, they go home for the summer and then they come back end of September. So I think a lot more people kind of in your second year, a lot more people do stay over the summer, because often people get jobs or you're in a house with your friends and you don't have the pressure of moving out of halls. So, you know, like it varies for everyone, but if that's something that you need to keep in mind, then really make sure you do have those crossover dates, because it's really important. You don't want to be having to get hotels and Airbnbs just so you can live in a city, if you know what I mean. Also, another thing for when you're going round, I know it would be really hard to like keep all these things in your mind at once, but actually ask what furniture comes with the house. So when people were looking around my room this year, for instance, I've got my own chest of drawers, I have got my own bedside table, and when they're looking around they might think that that comes with the house, but it actually doesn't, because that's something that I bought here myself and I will be taking with me to my next house. So it really is important, because you don't want to get your hopes up that, you know, you're not going to have to buy something or something's going to be there when you're looking around, because it might not be like that. So just make sure you ask, because the estate agent will be able to tell you, and they'll be able to show you like pictures they've taken like previously, where they were taking like the pictures for the website and stuff. So it's really good to check those. Also, when you're looking around, just bear in mind that the room isn't going to look how it looks when somebody else is in it. So once you've got all your stuff in it, it's going to be much more homely, and it's going to look much more like your space than it is when someone else is looking around that. So you've kind of got to picture the room with nothing else in it, stripped completely back, or picture it with your stuff in it, and that will help it kind of feel more like you're going to be able to live in that house. Because I know it's very daunting when you're going and looking around thinking, I cannot see myself living here at all. But I promise you, once you move in and you get your stuff in, you can always paint the walls. So my walls were white and I repainted them over, so it was like really nice in there. It had some shelves on the wall, and they were a bit gross, they looked a bit old, and they were like dipping down in the middle. So my stepdad helped me out by taking those off completely. He made me new shelves and pin them back up to the wall, and we'll obviously leave that for the next person when they come, because obviously if you change something, you've either got to put the original version back or just leave it so that they're still the same kind of things in the room. But yeah, so my family helped me a lot when moving into my first house, because they helped me paint, they helped me change my wardrobe as well, because when I first came here the wardrobe was completely broken, it was awful. So that's another tip. Once you move in, don't be afraid if something's broken, or if you're not happy with something, to say to your landlord or to the letting agency, whoever you kind of communicate with through that, just say to them about it and they will get it changed for you. So my wardrobe was completely broken, the door was literally falling off, and I was like, I can't really have that. So I literally emailed the letting agent, they spoke to the landlord bought a new wardrobe, and it was here, and I could have it in my room. You know, like a few things have happened like that, like our Hoover broke, we texted the landlord, he went and got us a new one. So don't feel like you have to do that, because you are renting, and often as students you don't have the money to just go out and buy things and stuff like that. So just make sure, you know, if something breaks, you tell the landlord or the letting agency, whoever you're in contact with, and they will help you with it, and they can supply new things, you know, or talk to you about how to fix it. So that's really important to do. Don't be afraid of that at all. So when you first move into a house as well, what they did with my house is, before you move in, they take pictures of absolutely everything. Anywhere that there's any kind of like, if there's like scuffs in the walls, or literally they take pictures of everything, every single thing, every single piece of furniture. So it's called an inventory. So you need to make sure when you move in, I think they give you like a 7-day period to check over it. What we did was everyone checked their own rooms on it, and then we kind of said, yeah, this is right, or yeah, this is wrong. And if something is wrong on it, don't be afraid to say it, and they can come back, they can re-photograph it, or they can just put it in the notes at the bottom. So this is, obviously you put a damage deposit down, and this is really important for being able to get your damage deposit back. So they will come after you move out, once it's all clean and everything, you're all moved out, and they will come and check it and compare it to the inventory pictures. So it's really important that you check through those, because if there's damage that you know was there but you've not said it on the inventory, or you've not made those changes on the inventory, then they can actually blame that on you, and you might not get your deposit back. So moving on to something that might affect some people but might not affect other people, is parking. So we all in this house have our cars up here, just because it's easier for our course if we have our cars here, because we have to go on placement. So it's really important when you're looking around the houses, or once you've got your house, to look at the road, see if you need a parking permit, see if it's free parking, if you don't want to pay for a parking permit, if there's any parking nearby, if it's got a driveway, how many people are going to bring their cars. You know, you need to negotiate this in your house, because at my house 2 people were allowed parking permits. So we negotiated that by whoever lived the furthest away or whoever had their car here first year. So they would have the parking permits and they would pay for it themselves, just because that was the priority for people that would be able to get home. So if you live really far away, it's not fair someone who lives 30 miles away, someone lives 200 miles away, if they're not going to have their car here and they want their car here. So that is another thing to just think about, and you can negotiate that between yourselves. But often what I found is they're always kind of free parking quite close. For us, there's free parking literally on the road next to us, so only one person actually ended up paying for a permit, and we literally just park on the road next to us. So the next thing, and I think this concerned us quite a lot when we were moving in, because obviously in halls you get all your bills, all your Wi-Fi, everything included in one payment for your rent that goes out, I don't know, however often you pay it. Some people pay it once a month, some people pay it termly, so you don't have to worry about any of that. But when you're in a house, most often than not, you have your rent going separately to your gas and electric, your water, your Wi-Fi, all those kind of things, and you have to arrange that yourself. So when we moved in, we actually had letters from companies, like the gas and electric company sent us a letter saying, hi, we know you're a student house, we know there's going to be new people moving in, we provided the gas and electric for your house last year, would you like to stay with us? Here's a quote on how much it's going to be. And that happened with pretty much every company, I think, apart from Wi-Fi, but I know that in some people's houses they did have that for Wi-Fi as well. So that's really important to look at, consider, but also go online, look at all the different providers, because often there will be something cheaper, and you can ring up and say, I've been offered this, can you do any better, or are you a better provider, or what's the good Wi-Fi in the area? We unfortunately went with some Wi-Fi that hasn't been great for us, but there may have been better Wi-Fi in the area. It's kind of hit and miss with those kind of things. And just make sure, you know, when you're signing contracts and speaking to the companies, you have one person that kind of leads it all, and you need to just make sure that you all know when the date that you're paying it is, what you're paying for, are you getting what you need. Really look into it, and we actually kind of had our parents help with those kind of things, just because it was the first time that any of us had actually lived in a house and had to sort out our own bills. So that was really important to just kind of double check with our parents, make sure we were doing it properly and we were getting the right things. But companies will be completely fine to talk to you on the phone about it, to give you advice, and a lot of them, sometimes they do try to get you to buy stuff from them, but a lot of them know that you're students and they will try and, you know, get the best deal for you. So with our gas and electric, we pay this at a standard rate every single month, and if we overpay for what we're actually using, then we get this back at the end of the year. So this was quite an important thing for us, because of course you've got to think in the winter when you're using the heating, you're going to be using a lot more than you are in the summer when you're not using the heating and you're using kind of a lot less gas and electric, and a lot less heating. So we decided to go for a fixed rate every month, and then if we had any extra, then we'd get it back at the end. And this has actually worked out really well, because we had a fixed rate of, I think it was about £25 to start with, and then actually we weren't using as much as they predicted we would for 5 people in a house. So then it got to move down to £21. So now we're paying £21 a month, and then if we overpay, they will give it to us back. So that works out quite well, rather than kind of paying what you use, because it could be that you're paying a lot more in the winter than you would be in the summer, which is great in the summer because you won't be paying as much, but you've got to think about student loans and how much money you've actually got to negotiate with all the housemates, with whether you're going to be able to do that and whether you're going to be able to afford that. And if you can afford that, then that's great, but don't put yourself in a compromising position. So we also have a letter sent to us, I think it's every month or every 3 months, something like that, about how much we're using, if we're in credit, so that money that we'll get back again, get back at the end, or if we're not, and we make sure we check these just to kind of see what we're using, update ourselves, check we're not, you know, going crazy with using the heating and stuff like that, and we have a discussion about it most of the time, and just make sure that we're using within our rounds. But I think most houses by 2020 have to actually have one of those smart meters, so that'll be really good. So then you can kind of see what you're using all the time, and that'll be really important for kind of students and making sure you're staying within your budget. And the last thing that I actually want to say on kind of bills and stuff like that is make sure you get your TV license if you're going to have TVs in the house, or if you're going to watch iPlayer, ITV player, 4 on demand, all those kind of things, because they can penalise you, and I have heard it happen to people. It really isn't much. I think between 5 of us it was like £30 for the whole year. It's nothing, and you can get fined if you don't have one for the household. It's literally one per household, no matter how many TVs you have. It's something really important to do. It saves you getting fined, and it's hardly any money for the year in the grand scheme of things. So I just want to end on a nice positive note. I just want to say, don't be worried when you're moving into a second year house. It is so much nicer living in a house than it is to live in halls. It feels more homely. It feels much more grown up, and it just feels a bit more yours, just that little bit more comfortable. For me, it's definitely the best thing that I've done. I love it compared to halls. I love having a garden, and moving into this house taught me so much for what to know about moving into a third year house. So there definitely have been some different things. The things that I'm looking for was slightly different. We've gone for slightly more modern house in a slightly different area, just because me and the 2 girls that I'm living with next year think that'll kind of suit us more. And I have gone down from living with 6 people in my first year, 5 people in my second year, to only being 3 of us all together in my third year. This is just kind of because it can get very busy living in a house with 5 people. So it can get very busy, you know, in the kitchen in the morning. You're trying to make breakfast, you're trying to get your lunch boxes ready, and for me, like, I'm not used to living with that many people. My parents work full-time, I've always had a job, my brother's always had a job at home, so there was never that many people in the house. So for me, it was a completely different environment. So that's just why I've opted to living with less people, and that's completely fine. Like, you can change it every year, and it's also completely fine if you're not going to go into a house, if you're going to stay in halls. A lot of people do it. They do stay in halls just because it is a lot easier with paying bills, and just kind of there's less to sort out. It's kind of done for you. So that kind of side of it is easier. So don't feel disheartened if you know you're not moving into a house. It will happen at some point in your life. It might not just be while you're at university. And if you do go back into halls in third year after living in a house, at least you've had that experience. You might prefer halls. It might just be easier for you. So yeah, you know, there are so many different options. So think about them all really widely. Make sure you're laying out all your choices on the table, talking to your housemates about it all, because that communication is really important. So yeah, but I hope you all who are at university are doing okay in this time. I know it's really difficult having online teaching, and it just doesn't feel like it's worth it, but it will be in the end when you've got your degree and you've done exactly what you went to university for. I hope you're all staying safe, and I'll talk to you again soon. Thank you for watching.